Oh, and what's up, Marcus? How are you?
I'm good.
It's like back in the day, we used to like do like 10, 20 outtakes of the mixes, and everyone was slightly different. And then we're like, oh, we like
Sharam,
this
save
one,
it.
this
Sharam,
thing.
save it for when we're recording.
I'm
No,
recording.
he is recording. He is recording.
I'm
Yeah, I know, but save the stories. For
No,
when we're
but the whole
recording.
idea is like, you know, we would take pieces from the like 18 takes and put the whole mix to what some like just a remix or whatever, like a track together. So with
Yeah.
Zoom, it's the same thing. Like just record it, make them chop it together.
So we are recording now, right?
We are recording.
Recording now, so I
All
guess let's just start by. Hey, Marcus, are you recording?
I'm recording.
So,
Okay.
guys, thanks for joining us today for this chat. And I guess the last time we were all together in one place was probably 20 years ago in our club in Nottingham, which seems crazy. 2 decades have passed by. Obviously, a lot has happened since then, and certainly in the last year, a lot's happened. And I think the last time I saw you, Ali, was in Tulum. You played for us in Tulum in January of this year. And then we were together a couple of nights afterwards for the Afterlife show. And who knew what was coming then? And I suppose, like us, it's probably almost 12 months since you guys have done a gig. And obviously, there's a lot of negatives around COVID, and we can all look at the impacts it's had. But I'd be kind of curious to know, have you guys found any positives in the situation at all?
I mean, I'm sure Sharam, for you, being able to spend more time with the family was probably the biggest positive, right?
Yeah.
Sharam's got 4 kids, so.
Yeah, so it's a lot of I mean, you kind of forced into the situation. Not that you didn't want to be in the situation, like in terms of like spending time with family, but it just you know, sort of forcefully recalibrates you, and where, you know,
It's a reset, yeah?
that
It's a reset.
it's a reset, yeah. And then, you know, you sort of like get into like a different routine, you know, when you're on the road mostly, you know, for me, I had kind of pulled back a lot because of obviously family reasons. But still, like, you know, to go from whatever it was to zero, it's sort of like a shock to the system. It's a shock to the system of the family. They're like, why are you home so much?
You know, I was thinking about it the other day. It is really hard when you take everything that was such a big part of our life away all at the same time. You know, the constant travel, seeing friends around the world. Obviously, we're not able to play in clubs and express ourselves that way, connect with fans, you know, go to all of my favorite restaurants around the world. I mean, there's on so many levels.
It's hit some of us harder than the others.
We've been impacted, you know, obviously, you know, everyone's impacted financially in our industry as well, and it's a huge reset. But, you know, you have to, otherwise you'll go crazy. You have to look at the positives. Like, I was just thinking the other day, you know, how good this has been for my liver, you know, because you get into this cycle of nonstop gigging, and obviously the alcohol, if you're a drinker, comes along.
Speak for yourself, man. I've been drinking wine every night.
And yeah, it's like, you know, the impact on your hearing. You know, you're able to have more of a routine. Like you can exercise every day. You spend time with family. So there have been a lot of positives. You have more time. You know, I took up baking and you know, learning how to make pizza and things like that. And you know, taking Spanish classes, doing all the things that before I would complain that I didn't have time to do. So you really have to do that.
Do you think you'll change your approach to your work when you do get back, when things do get back to some kind of normal? Do you think you'll change your approach and not be touring so kind of aggressively, I suppose, for want of a better word? Do you think
I think
balance the two out?
We're all going to be changed. Our industry will be changed.
Yeah.
We're not, you know, it's hard to say in what respects, because we don't really know when things are going to open back up again. But I think we're all going to appreciate, even the fans that come out, we're all going to appreciate these freedoms that we had, that we probably took for granted for all these years, and us artists as well, you know, being able to do what we love and earn great living at it. I think for generations we've taken that for granted, and I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. We're going to feel and experience things with a lot more appreciation and impact going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the same for all of us, Alec.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting and challenging time, certainly.
Yeah.
So listen, guys, I want to put you in a time machine now and take you back to the year 2000, and we were just getting to know each other at that time, and you guys were really at the top of your game back then. You'd sort of remix Madonna, you'd had Grammy nominations and so on. And we thought, let's just take a punt. Let's see if Deep Dish will do a compilation for us. And we were pretty shocked when you said yes, to be honest. I mean, if you can remember back then, I guess for the record industry, it was a very different time. CDs were the sort of the dominant format, and I guess streaming wasn't even thought of for another decade. Facebook, social media did the country back for 5 or 6 years. So CDs were really, and I don't know if you view this the same way, but releasing the mix compilation was a great way to maintain or raise your profile. It certainly pushes the label from, it helped us build relationships with DJs, it helped us to tour more and so on. How did you guys see it? Was it the same for you?
I mean, obviously, compilation game was the game to be played at the time, and we were sort of realizing it because we were like mostly doing our own production and remixes, and we had done a compilation album, like in a true sense of a compilation album called Penetrate Deeper, which basically was a collection of our own work and our own remixes, and that was sort of our first artist album or first compilation combo. So we saw their sort of reaction to that and how it was perceived. So we were like really open to that whole idea. And also we always felt like the compilations showcase, what we're playing in that specific period of time. A lot of people were making tapes and stuff like that, but they were like, wow, we can actually play the records that we play at our gigs and have it be sort of stored in history books at that period of as what we play at that period of time. The whole idea was just like, where do I sign up? You know what I mean? It was very exciting. But like, we want to do it. It wasn't like, well, should we? I don't think there was any trepidation on our part, like, should we or should we not? We're like, we just were looking for the right avenue. And obviously, Renaissance, you guys were like on top of your game. And what you were doing, not only with the music you were releasing, the compilations, and then you had the club, the media. So it was just like a match made in heaven for us. So I think this is that no-brainer.
Yeah, the brand was so synonymous with quality. It was classy. The compilations at the time that Digweed and Sasha did were like revered. And we felt like we'd be in great company in contributing something for you guys, and that led to a longer, more established relationship between Deep Dish and Renaissance, which we'll always treasure.
No, I was trying to think of the timeline between the association between the club, because I guess by the time we opened the club in Nottingham and then you guys agreed to do that sort of mini residency there in 2000, we must have already been in talks about the compilation. Given that the compilation was released in August of that year, I guess it was already underway to a large degree.
Yeah, the residency came in first. I distinctly recall a meeting Jeff and I had before we moved over to Nottingham. The Renaissance office was in Stoke, and Jeff and I were sat together, and we were going through the booking sheet for the club and what we were going to do. And I remember Jeff turning to me and going, "Do you think Deep Dish would work at the club? Do you think we could put them in?" And I was just like, "Yeah, junk science."
Marcus, you would always do the warm up as well, if I remember.
Yeah, well, I was saying, not a lot of them though. Eventually, you guys took on the whole night, and you used to play these wonderful 6-hour sets from open to close.
But I used to do a lot of I remember coming early a few times, or maybe every time, I don't know, and just like listening to what you were playing and train spotting a bit, asking you about tracks and stuff.
I'm sure that should be the other way around.
Yeah, we always went to the club early. I remember, like, you know, one of my fondest memories is, you know, that restaurant. I forgot the name of the restaurant. A restaurant at that hotel where we would eat, would have like the most amazing conversation, steak and wine, and then just run to walk to the club, and it was just like unbelievable. That whole experience. It was such an amazing mood that you were in after like a great meal and great company and conversation, and then go to the music. And we always try to get early to hear market.
Yeah, it was a nice club. It was a beautiful club to be in as well. So you didn't mind getting in there early. You know, at the restaurant,
Correct.
Movie room, and visually the whole. It's funny. I found that place sort of It took us 3 years to get the license. I found it was a disused theatre. It had been empty for years and years. And I walked in. Somebody said, "I've got this building to show you. It might be great for Renaissance." So I walked in, I looked up at the ceiling, I saw all these cherub reliefs in the ceiling. I thought, yeah, this is our club. So it took a long, long time. And we got the guy from the Tunnel in Glasgow, Ron McCulloch, to do the design. He also did Home in London. And of course, the icing on the cake was a Steve Dash sound system that we had in there. Yeah, it was a very special.
At the time, there was only a few clubs around the world that had that sound system. I think it was Womb in Tokyo.
Yeah.
You guys.
Yeah.
Home, I think later on brought it.
Home in afterwards, yeah. I'm not sure if Ministry, I don't think the Ministry even had it, did they? I think we were the only ones. Well, yeah, great times. But thinking about the compilation, Shirami, you were just saying about you wanted to play the music that represented you at that time. I guess with compilations, though, there was also an added pressure to consider, I'm not just playing a set here, this is something that has got to be almost timeless, that people will go back to again and again and again. So did you approach compilations differently than you would if you were doing a live stream today, for example?
Yeah. I mean, I think what we did, the way we would go about these compilations, you know, Ali obviously had his records that he would basically go to and play, and I had my records.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and these were like tried and tested records. So we would be like, okay, out of my collection, I have these things that I think are appropriate, and Ali would say the same thing. And then we go through them, and then we would always look for iconic records, even if they're just one record. You know, of course, the compilation of a bunch of records. So we always, I think our mindset was always like, what is this record going to sound like in 10 years time? Is this record going to engage people? So that's it. So then we trickled down from like this big amount of records that we wanted to put in there to a few. And then at that point, we had to make sure they worked together. You know, there was no like, you know, mixing key or any of that stuff. So we had to actually, you know, and we're not like musicians like, Sasha is, you know, so we had to sort of like rely on our ear, like, okay, this record, these two work together. You know, we would always like, oh, these two are perfect together, you know? So then, you know, Ali had his set, I had sort of my set, these records that you play back to back, and then we put them all together. And I remember we listened to it and we're like, okay, up to here it works. This part kind of gets boring. We need to replace these records. Yeah. And we went through that process like, I don't know, like 10, 20 times.
Yeah.
So we got it done to what we were really happy with. And then we had to go and edit them together. But again, the whole idea was always like, you know, we always like wanted to make sure that these compilations are not just like for DJs. We're like, okay, play a 9-minute track and DJs are going to enjoy it. But it was for like regular people that are come from like listening to like, you know, pop music. You know, their attention span is a lot shorter. So how can we make this 9-minute record sound interesting? So we would do these long mixes, like 2-minute mixes to try to shorten the track that way. And then, you know, obviously we go and chop them up to make sure that we meet the 76-minute mark. Yeah. We always went over like by a second or two.
What you did.
Yeah, I remember, like, from what I remember, like, editing was just a complete nightmare that we didn't look forward to, but we felt was essential in condensing the track down to its core elements for the average listener. And I also remember always with the compilations that we were doing around that time, it was super important to go on really long drives. It wasn't uncommon for us to just decide on a whim as we were working on a compilation, and I'm sure we did it with the Renaissance one, to like drive all the way to New York and back just to listen to it. And in doing that, we would find, you know, areas which needed more work. Sometimes Sharon would come to me and be like, all right, this whole side we need to change, it's just not flowing. And we would start from zero again. And oftentimes we would go over deadline. And I remember as we're talking about it now, I remember we were over deadline on this compilation, and we had to play for you guys in Ibiza. You had a residency at Privilege, if I'm correct.
That's right.
And we you know, and there was a deadline on the compilation, a really pressing deadline. And
missed by like
it was
2 weeks.
It was either coming to do the gig for you guys in Ibiza, and at the time it was a really important gig, and I think maybe Kylie Minogue was on the bill as well, or staying back in DC and finishing the compilation. So I think the compromise was you guys got us on the Concorde, so that bought us one extra day back in DC, otherwise we would have missed the gig. So we were able to finish the compilation.
Yeah.
And we rushed over on the Concorde, our first ever experience on the Concorde, to Ibiza to do that special show.
Well, we finished it at my house, so we were like back and forth between Ali's house and my house. We finished it at my apartment. I remember clearly, and our deadline was to be in the limo at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
to basically take us to New York on a 4-hour drive from DC to New York to catch the 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever a.m. flight to New York. Like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. was our deadline. So we were working round the clock, no sleep. We hadn't slept for like, I don't know how long. We were like zombies, and we had to get this thing right. And we were like, just like editing and doing all this stuff. And I remember like exhausted, completely exhausted, 3 a.m. The limo waiting for us down. So we go in and we put the CD in the limo and listen to it all the way to New York. And like, you know, and that made the drive a lot faster, but we were like tired, but we like couldn't fall asleep. We had to listen. And I'm hoping, oh my God, please make sure there's no mistakes, no problems in there. And of course, at the end, I'm sure Ali can attest. We're like, oh man, this part, we could have probably done that. And he's like, dude, shut up.
It's done. It's finished.
Guys, can I just ask, when you say that the way you edited the album, because I mean, at that point, sort of a lot of the Ableton was really coming into its own. When you did the album, did you sort of do each mix as live and then stitch the album together that way after doing each mix, you know, in real time between?
We used to, so when we first started this compilation with Penetrate Deeper, there was no editing. So I remember we recorded the whole set, and sometimes would be like on the 60th minute and be a mistake on mixing, and we had to start from scratch. And Penetrate Deeper, we probably did that mix like 20 times until we completely got it right. Later on, we started like editing on Pro Tools. So then we had the luxury of doing the mix, and if every time there was a mistake, we would just continue on and record that one mix that we had a mistake on again.
Yeah.
So then it would be like these parts of like 2 or 3 tracks that were perfect, and then there would be a mistake, and then we sort of stitch those together. And then bounce.
I remember the early version of Pro Tools that we were using, and we were always working with engineers who would get like a beta version, you know, super early version of software. And the early version, you had to select the region that you wanted to keep, as opposed to selecting the region that you wanted to cut. And then in a different window, you had like all these regions that you wanted to keep, and you had to make sure that you were able to stitch them together. It was just like an interesting early way of doing all the editing that we weren't able to do before, like with Penetrate Deeper, and I think maybe 1 or 2 other compilations that we did around that time, where we had to go live, and if we screwed up, which often, you know, the very real possibility of screwing up mixing vinyl was always looming.
Yeah, it's not like today, is it?
And that our sort of nightmares and putting compilations together were always licensing, which also translated to being your nightmares as well. You know, you've got a track list together, and suddenly there's a track we can't license, and you have to take it out. And back then, we used to live in fear of DJs presenting track lists that had tracks from major labels. And when we saw Moby and Everything But the Girl and Gabrielle on there, we're like, oh no.
I don't envy any label that had to, you know, constantly be clearing, especially the major label stuff.
Yeah, it was our own remixes, and I think I remember Kurosh at the time was working the back channels with the people, the label, trying to get it going.
He was trying to pull favors. Yeah, he definitely was. I vividly remember that as well. But we got there in the end, guys. We got there in the end. It's been kind of interesting, you know, the response to these, to us putting these albums back up for general, I suppose, general access, really, because obviously they're kind of dotted around illegally all over the internet. And we just wanted to get them all to live in one place and have the whole collection in one place again, because clearly, I guess, repressing or re-releasing CDs just isn't even a consideration in the current market. So to have them all in one place for streaming just seemed like a great option. I mean, from your perspective, talking of streaming, obviously during lockdown, there's been a lot of most DJs have kind of migrated towards DJ streams, live streams. How have you found that process? Obviously you've got engaged to some degree. Did you have some frustrations with it all? And are you planning to do any more?
I think the initial hurdle was always the hardware. And then that extent, like, you know, which cameras are best, camera positions, and then you started to get into all the different platforms, like where do you want to stream? Do you want to stream everywhere or just one place? What software do you want to use for the streams? And while, you know, you're grappling with all of that, you're also thinking about, you know, what message, musical kind of message do you want to beam out to the world? Because you're in total control. You don't have to worry about like emptying a dance floor per se, like in a club. So you can get away with, like, you know, going out.
So you're happy about that?
Yeah, I did a lot of streams, and you know, after a while, you know, the initial streams were all clubby, and after a while, I just like felt like it, for some reason, with everything that was going on, especially here in America, it just wasn't appropriate, and I started to really, you know, reconnect with my reggae roots, dub reggae roots, and reggae for me was something that I always have in the background to help me, like, you know, to put me in a better mood, so to speak, if ever I was feeling down, and I was kind of feeling down around that time, and the reggae helped, and I figured if it's helping me, it would also resonate with the fans, and so I started to do this Sunday thing, and the reactions were so great that I kept it going. You know, we did quite a number of those shows. And then, you know, after, like, I don't know, maybe the 20th or 30th one, it just felt right to maybe end it there. And otherwise, you know, people would forget that I play club music as well.
No, I don't. I'm sure you're aware. We've done a series called Engage, where DJs have done kind of non-club sets, basically home listening or musical influences, which worked really well, and like you said, seemed more appropriate than kind of banging club sets. It just didn't seem the right way for us to go, really.
Yeah, for me, it was interesting because one of the things I've always grappled with, you know, as an artist,
yeah,
and DJ, is I was always, you know, that's how we came up. We came up in the world that music was eclectic. You could play, you know, we were known for like house and deep house, and then we ended up, you know, doing a compilation for you guys under the progressive house, and later on we did all these other things. So we always had our hands in everything because we were like fans of music first and foremost. So I sort of like was never able to like put that aside and say, like, you know what, I want to be this only thing. Like Ali was really great at his decision making. He's like, I want to be techno, and that's where he sort of stood at and went for it, which is very admirable. I always had a hard time with it because I always felt like there's too much going on. You know, I don't want to give up anything. I want to keep all the great music. So, you know, I used to play like drum and bass sets during my sets. And as time went on, music became very segregated. Where you became, you know, you were either part of this camp or that camp or that camp, and then these sub camps. You know, and I never really could get my head around that. I never understood that. So, but I realized like a lot of people were like, you know, kind of like turned off by me playing drum and bass or like dropping like whatever, some strange record in the middle of my set. And the feedback I would get like, oh my God, your set was amazing except that one record in the middle. Like, I'm like, what? So they forget the like 3-hour set. They remember that one record that maybe it wasn't part of, you know, the quota, you know, of that genre. So what happened with the live streaming, it actually was really refreshing for me because I was able to do all these different sets.
Yeah.
From a bass set, break set, you know, techno set, deep house, all kinds of sets. and I was like able to focus on the specific genre and sort of flip that around. It's like, hey, look, you know, here's a drum and bass set for the drum and bass heads, and here's a deep house set. And of course, I would also do my regular set.
Yeah.
So for me, it was very therapeutic, and it kind of helped me, like Ali said, you know, with reggae music, you know, that was his sort of way of dealing with a lot of what was going on.
Yeah.
And I think for me also, like being able to do these sets that I'm not known for in the public eye, for me, it was, I like my two drum and bass sets that I've done, probably the most inspired I've been doing a set probably in 20 years. Like I was so happy. I listened to it like 10 times. I'm like, am I like being narcissistic here? Why am I listening to this so many times, you know? But that's how it made me feel. These records were just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I've always been like,
I think it's changed the relationship with your fans as well, because they've been able to probably get a better understanding of you musically, not just looking at you behind the DJ booth.
right,
you know?
right. So like, you know, early on we were talking about the positives, and you always have to look at the positives.
Yeah.
And I think that is the one, for me, musically speaking, that is the one positive. You know, a lot of my fans, you know, current, old and new, they probably got to see a side of me that they weren't able to see me, like, you know, if you play in a certain gig in a certain place. And I think that is the one thing that we can carry forward with us as we, you know, as hopefully things open up and sort of build on it.
Yeah. Do you think you've both had more time to listen to music and concentrate on production? And I guess you must have had, really, because there's been nothing else to do.
I mean, I'm more lazy, I can tell you that.
I was in March, I was recording in LA when this whole COVID thing happened, and the week leading up to the big shutdown, it was mid-March, I had a hard time focusing on anything in the studio. It just felt like there was something looming that was gonna have a lasting effect, and nobody was sure what that was gonna be. And then when it happened and LA shut down, I decided to move, you know, come back to Washington, DC, and I was there for a bit. Then my engineer had to come back here. I wasn't able to work when I was here either. I was just doing other things. And when my engineer came back here to spend some time with his family, he said, "Hey, why don't we try to resume what we were working on in March? I think maybe it's been enough time. We've had to get, you know, collect our thoughts and feelings and everything like that." And we started working again, and then the ideas all sort of came flowing again, and we were quite productive.
Have you both done quite a lot of production then, individually, during lockdown?
Yeah, I mean,
I've got
quite a bit.
Yeah, I've got like 5 singles ready. A collaboration with Kolsch that we finished during this lockdown, and also a collaboration with Oliver Hunman.
And as a label, are you holding things back until the clubs do start again, or?
That's been the difficult question to answer, and I don't think I've been able to fully answer it, you know, with my label manager, Marina. We initially paused everything.
Yeah.
Then we had to tell the artists something, and some artists came to us and said they would, you know, prefer not to have anything released right now because nobody can play these tracks out. And then other artists, you know, were fine with whatever decision we wanted to make. Then I started to talk to other colleagues who have labels, and everybody was saying that they kept, you know, their label going, and sales started to increase. And I talked to the Beatport guys and others, and they were seeing a huge jump in sales, both physical vinyl sales, streaming, and then it made sense to keep it going, also to make sure that the artists are being taken care of.
Of course.
And you know, then the question became, okay, well, what are they gravitating towards right now? If we can't be in clubs to hear this clubby music, yeah, DJs can play it in the streams, but like, will people's taste in music, electronic dance music, shift to more listening kind of styles, or to alternative left field, home listening kind of styles? And that's sort of where I am right now. I'm trying to figure out, like, musically where I want to steer the label, and also musically what I want to do right now until, you know, things open back up.
Yeah, with the
Sorry.
same
Sure.
with us, we, at Yoki Camp, we first decided to like not release anything, but then immediately we're like, this is the time actually people are looking for more music. And not only it's an opportunity, but I think it's also an obligation to try to keep things as normal as possible.
Yeah.
And we did. I mean, we basically went on, we kept our release schedule, and we had our best quarter ever, like in the past probably 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was like phenomenal. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, it's like there's like this whole new resurgence of people looking for music. And I think the whole live streaming thing also helped because, I was able to play a lot of the records that, that were upcoming or whatever. Yeah. And I think that might have had like some sort of a halo effect on the whole thing. And talking to our distributor, and they said, yeah, a lot of the labels, I think they kept back their big tentpole releases, but they went on with the other, like sort of entry level or medium size sort of like releases to medium size artists, and they've all reported the same thing. So I think it was like generally the whole industry. I think
we've found the same thing as well. We've continued our release schedule pretty much as normal, really, and certainly vinyl sales have been really strong as well. Ironically, in this digital age.
People, people I think they just had more time to go to their record collection. They had more time to reorganize things, and then they sort of like fell back in love with vinyl or wanted to build on it. So
I talked to Digweed, and Digweed used this time for sure to completely organize his records, and I got really jealous. I'm like, oh my god, that means I need to do mine.
He's a pretty organised guy anyway, John. His nature,
And have you done the vinyl yet then, Ali?
No. Oh, no, it's every time I it's all in my mom's house, and every time I go there, I go down to the basement, I start looking through it all, and it's such a mess that I'm always putting it off. But this is the perfect opportunity to do it.
Yeah, should have done it by now.
Well, there's always next year.
What was the next shutdown?